Hey there, A's Day fans. Welcome to our Tuesday edition of our show. We apologize for our week hiatus as we were on a content creation trip this past weekend for our Bases, Barrels, and Ballplayers podcast. We were down in Miami checking out some of the local hot spots as well as being able to check out Miami Marlins Fan Fest. Got to meet a few players, experience all of that. If you are a baseball fan, be sure to check out all of our content that will be coming out very shortly towards the end of this week and next from our experience down in Miami. But more importantly, for our purposes here, we are back behind the mic here at A's Day for our Tuesday edition. Once again, I'm your host, Joe Grado. Today is February 10th, Tuesday. We have a lot to catch up on as, of course, leading up to our departure from Miami, it had been a quiet week, but then from Friday on, the A's have gotten busy. Andy Ibanez was claimed off waivers and to clear space, they end up DFAing Max Schuemann. We take a look at this developing situation. MLB and A's legend Mark McGwire is set to come back, we learned, to the team as a special assistant to player development. We'll get to know him a little bit and what he perhaps may bring to the Athletics for the 2026 season as part of the baseball operations department. A's look for some velocity and back-end bullpen experience as they go out and sign right-handed pitcher Scott Barlow. And we continue on with the most recent news in A's universe that went down yesterday. And then we had a developing, on Monday. And then earlier today on Tuesday, we had some news as well. There was a trade that went down as part of Max Schuemann being DFA'd. He did clear waivers. They ended up trading him to make room on the 40-man roster. They get a minor league pitcher in exchange from the New York Yankees. We'll discuss the trade the trade details around that. And then we learned that the A's did indeed go out and add some starting pitching depth as they go out and sign Aaron Civale on a one-year deal to round out, most likely, the 2026 rotation. We'll discuss our thoughts on that very intriguing move. Lots to unpack today. Exciting times as A's pitchers and catchers and the rest of spring training are set to take off this week. And that means A's baseball is back right around the corner. Holy Toledo, let's go A's. All right, there, A's Day fans. Thank you so much for tuning in to our Tuesday edition. Appreciate your patience and awaiting for the newest edition of A's Day. We are indeed back and are rather excited for the return of A's baseball so soon, including them, like I mentioned, reporting officially down to Mesa this week. Before we jump into today's show, just wanted to give a reminder of where you can find us outside of our podcast episodes that are available on your favorite podcast platform, wherever that is, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify Music, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Podbean, Samsung Radio, so many more. Wherever you type in A's Day, you'll most likely be able to find our green logo. Continue your support and listen to our most recent thoughts about the A's. We appreciate each and every one of you in our growing audience. In addition, be sure to check out our social media channels on Instagram at A's Day Baseball Podcast, on X, formerly known as Twitter, at A's Day Baseball, and check out our YouTube channel for baseball player interviews, baseball destination virtual city guides where the A's will be playing on the road, like hotspots, best places to stay, and attractions. If you want to take a future A's weekend baseball trip, we'll be sure to post plenty of content throughout the 2026 season and beyond, as well as video editions of our podcast episodes. And to become an official subscriber of A's Day, check us out on our Patreon site, patreon.com/A's Day, for just $2 a month. You'll be entered to win monthly A's Day t-shirts, A's autographed memorabilia, future A's game tickets, and so much more as we're able to grow this platform collaboratively. All right, let's jump in to our first topic of discussion, a very intriguing claim that the A's cashed in. The A's have claimed infielder-outfielder Andy Ibanez off waivers from the Dodgers. The Dodgers initially signed Ibanez to a 1-year, $1.2 million deal last month, and then they ended up trying to pass him through waivers in order to stash him away in AAA as a depth option. Instead, the A's are going to pick up that $1.2 million bill and add the versatile lefty masher to their infield mix. Ibanez, 32 years old, entering his age 32 season, is out of minor league options. So when the Dodgers signed him to a low-cost deal, despite a crowded infield bench group, it always seemed possible that they could try to sneak him outright through waivers to keep him as non-roster depth. Ibanez doesn't have the service time needed to reject an outright assignment in favor of free agency and retain any guaranteed money on his contract. So if he'd passed through waivers, he would surely have accepted the assignment. That won't be the case. He'll now head north to West Sacramento and call the Athletics hitter-friendly temporary digs at Sutter Health Park, his home park. The A's don't have a clear answer at third base currently, so Ibanez will compete for at-bats there while also providing a credible backup around the diamond. In parts of 5 Major League seasons, Ibanez is a .254 batting average hitter, a .304 on-base percentage, and .389 slugging percentage to complete the line. That includes subpar work in right-on-right situations, but he's feasted on left-handed pitching, hitting at a .280 batting average clip, a .372 on base, and a .452 slugging percentage line. He'll compete with Dow Hernandez, Brett Harris, Max Muncy, and Michael Stefanik for time at third base, but Ibanez has 5,300 professional innings at second base, 724 at first, and 242 at short, and 186 in the outfield corners, so he certainly can provide a lot of versatility all around. He's also the only member of that group of infield candidates who is out of minor league options, so he's very likely to crack the A's opening day roster. Ibanez has 3.133 years of Major League service time, making him controllable via arbitration for another 3 seasons. He'll need to rebound from last year's down showing at the plate for the A's to keep him around long term, but he's landed in a better hitter's environment with a club that has a clearer path to playing time than he'd have in Los Angeles. I love the move, personally, and I think, one, just seeing how the Dodgers operate in terms of bringing in players to their program, and of course, that's the back-to-back World Series champions. There is a reason that they wanted to store Ibanez and were confident that if he cleared waivers, would be a non-depth option at AAA. He is a very serviceable major leaguer and proved it during his time with the Tigers, especially towards the tail end. And I know he came down a little bit of a down year this past season, but compared to what the A's are coming into the 2026 season with, I think Ibanez does have a little bit more of a track record, and he is going to provide that versatility. As we mentioned at the top of the show, this move lead to them having to DFA someone to make room on the 40-man roster, which led, of course, to Max Schuemann's exit, who we are going to talk about later in the show. And we'll give a little bit more credence to him because he actually, spoiler, if you haven't heard yet, he is actually going to be playing for a new team in 2026 officially. But we'll get to that, like I said, in a little bit. But I think when you compare those two players, I think Ibanez does have more upside. I think defensively they're rather similar. They both can play all over the diamond. I think Schuemann perhaps has a little bit more foot speed, but Ibanez isn't too slow behind him. But I think what Ibanez can offer that Schuemann can't, I think, is a little bit more consistency with the bat. And I think what's really intriguing is especially how he can feast on left-handed pitching. So perhaps you can use him in a more of a platoon role, but he is going to get every opportunity to win that third base job. I would say at the time of recording today, at February 10th, I would say that the inside track to the everyday third base job is probably going to be Max Muncy. But I can guarantee that Ibanez is going to push him for time and at-bats at the position. Now, there's going to be opportunities for him when perhaps you need to give McNeil a day, perhaps Jacob Wilson a day, someone in the corner outfield needs a day, or perhaps, if you want to sit Soderstrom against a tough lefty and have Ibanez play left when a lefty is in there because of Ibanez's strengths against left-handed pitching, perhaps that's an option. Same thing if Butler has a tough matchup against left-handed pitching, you can have Ibanez play right and have that. So there's a lot you can do with Ibanez, and with them only taking on $1.2 million to get him, I love it. And with where he is at in terms of service time, he is a very cost-friendly player they can have until he is no longer arbitration eligible, and then by that time, he will be finishing age 35. He was a late bloomer, so perhaps at that point he wouldn't even be in the A's long-term plans anyway. So I think there's a lot in terms of the A's point of view. Love this pickup, and we'll see how it all shakes out. I think spring training is going to be very intriguing. Now we have a new name in the race over there, and looking forward to seeing how he meshes on this team, because I think, absolutely, like we mentioned a few moments ago, that he is basically a lock to make the opening day roster. He is out of options. You don't want to risk putting him out there, because I feel like someone else would go on there and stake that claim in him. I think he could serve a significant role in this team, being very versatile and perhaps getting a little bit of an offensive upgrade over Schuemann. Nothing against him. Schuemann certainly provided a great spark. Defensively, on the base paths, all of that good stuff, was a great teammate, but offensively was rather inconsistent, so I think we'll get a boost there, at least with the stick. So looking forward to perhaps Ibanez does have a sizzling spring and ends up being the everyday third baseman, and then now we'll have to have a different conversation about what Max Muncy's role is going to be. But it's certainly going to be very intriguing, and love the competition aspect of this, because I think competition really brings the best out of people, and for the ones that it brings the worst out of, well, I guess they weren't destined to win the job anyway. So looking forward to seeing one of the newer candidates to the A's organization. Best of luck to Andy Ibanez. And again, as we have welcomed all of the newest A's to the organization, if Ibanez wants to come on an A's Day, get to know him, talk to him a little bit, we would love to have him on for a player interview at any moment. All right, let's move along here and talk about the A's baseball operation aspect of things, as they have made an announcement that they have indeed hired Mark McGwire as a special assistant in their player development department on Friday. He returns to the organization that inducted him into their Team Hall of Fame in 2019. McGwire, now 62, played the first 12 years of his career with the A's, and we're going to get to know him a little bit throughout the entirety of his career. Just a brief overview. I know he's a very popular name in baseball, but perhaps you may not be familiar with him. We'll do our part here to give a little bit of an insight. He won, McGwire, the Rookie of the Year award in 1987 and made 9 of his 12 All-Star Game appearances with the club. He twice led the majors in home runs while wearing an A's uniform, and was an instrumental part of the teams that won 3 consecutive pennants and 1 World Series between 1988 and 1990. He remains the franchise's home run leader with 363, while his 941 runs batted in ranks 4th in club history. Those on-field accomplishments and his overall legacy are complicated by his use of performance-enhancing drugs. He admitted in 2010 that he had used steroids for the majority of his career, including during his record home run chases as a member of the Cardinals in the late 1990s. The PED ties have kept him out of the National Baseball Hall of Fame, despite a statistical resume that would have him a first-ballot inductee had he achieved it without using steroids. That said, McGwire obviously has an extensive knowledge of hitting that he can bring to his new role. He had a 9-year run on MLB staffs between 2010 and 2018. McGwire was the hitting coach for the Cardinals when they won the 2011 World Series. He also worked as the Dodgers hitting coach and a bench coach in San Diego through the 2018 season. He stepped down during the 2018-19 offseason to spend more time with family. A special assistant role will allow him to be around the A's organization without requiring the commitment of a full-time coaching position with all the travel that comes with that. So welcome back to the A's, Mark McGwire. It seemed like it had been some time since he had significant ties to the club, and by going through his resume as both a player and a coach, someone that definitely has a very mixed legacy. It's pretty well documented that he did use performance-enhancing drugs during his time, but I do feel as if, he at the time of when he was using these performance-enhancing drugs, there wasn't a list of banned substances like there are now, as clearly outlined. And so, while I'm not an advocate for players that go down that pathway to get advantages for their on-field performance, I'm not going to completely discredit someone that still has vast knowledge of this game and was elite at his craft. And it was a different era of baseball. Like I said, I'm not condoning it, but I don't think I can necessarily I can't necessarily tear a guy down when it seemed like the goalposts were continuously moving. I wanted to really make sure I took a moment there to reflect on I wanted to get my point across clearly here. Because I feel like the difference between then and now, I think the guys that get caught now, there's absolutely no excuse. Especially since, I would say, mid-2000s, it's been rather clear what you can take and what you cannot. And I think back in the day, there's been in each era of baseball something that has been utilized as an advantage. But again, I don't think the guidelines and the parameters were clearly laid out. In the early 2000s and throughout the 2000s decade, drug testing became more of a predominant thing. And now we have a full banned substances list. So post 2003, let's call it, I would say there's no excuse. But things predating that, it's kind of the Wild West. So I'm not going to completely poo-poo anyone that played, and especially someone in McGwire, that, yes, we know that he had that advantage and why some of those baseballs were truly going to the moon. All that being said, he has an extensive resume for his on-field performance. He has a great knowledge of hitting. And I do believe in this chapter of his life, perhaps he wants to give back to the game in a positive way. He still wants to spend a lot of his time with family, but wants to reconnect with the franchise where it all started. And I think someone that did it at the highest level for an extended period of time can provide extensive wisdom for the sluggers on this team with this young ascending core. I think this is great timing for all of this. I think this is going to be a great opportunity. I'm sure McGwire will be down in Mesa during spring training. Kurtz, Soderstrom, Butler, Rooker, all of them are going to have, Langoliers are all going to have the opportunity to learn from one of the best sluggers of his era in McGwire. I mean, that's got to carry some weight, and it's got to send positive messages throughout that A's clubhouse that your franchise leader in home runs wants to come back and be a part of this. And to have that opportunity to learn from someone that played for such a long period of time and did it and was successful at it, I think there's a lot you can get in terms of wisdom. So I love that the A's are opening their channel of communication in a more effective way with their alumni. And it seems like with the combination of having improved events for enshrinement into their Athletics Hall of Fame as of recent, as well as welcoming guys back into the organization and they want to come back and be a part of it. These are all good signs that baseball operations in this franchise for the product on the field. I'm not talking about the mess, the business side of things and all the politics around that. I'm talking simply baseball product. All of these are signs that this team is moving in the right direction and getting closer perhaps to a playoff berth. Only time will tell. But welcome back, Big Mac. Looking forward to seeing him in the green and gold. And hey, that would be really cool to get an opportunity to interview him for A's Day and our Bases, Barrels, and Ballplayers podcast as well. Hopefully we'll run into him at Sutter Health Park, ask him a few questions, and perhaps we'll get him for a sit-down on the show. Time will tell. That would be a treat for me, but also, more importantly, for you, the lovely audience. All right, before we continue along, this episode is brought to you by the Holiday Inn Sacramento Downtown Arena. Stay in the heart of downtown at Holiday Inn Sacramento Downtown Arena, ideally located near Old Sacramento Waterfront, Golden One Center, home of the Sacramento Kings, and Downtown Commons. Our full-service Sacramento hotel is just 15 minutes from Sacramento International Airport and within walking distance of the California State Capitol and Safe Credit Union Convention Center. Host meetings, conferences, and social events in our flexible boardrooms and ballrooms supported by experienced on-site sales and events teams. Enjoy modern amenities including a rooftop outdoor pool, on-site fitness center, and Cypress Grill restaurant serving breakfast, dinner, and cocktails. Guest rooms and suites feature comfortable workspaces, contemporary amenities, and city views, making them ideal for both short stays and extended visits. Whether you are attending an event, planning a meeting, or exploring Sacramento dining, entertainment, and cultural attractions, our downtown location keeps you close to it all. Downtown access, full-service comfort, easy booking. Stay at our downtown Sacramento hotel. All right, moving right along, let's get back to the transactional side of things in terms of how the A's have added to the roster. And our wishes were granted as they added some depth to the bullpen, and they bring in someone with closing experience. The A's and right-handed pitcher Scott Barlow are in agreement on a deal of the 1-year variety with a $2 million guarantee and performance bonuses worth $1.3 million. Barlow will be entering his age 33 season. He has a fairly established profile at this point in his career. He walks too many guys, but is still a somewhat effective setup guy thanks to his ability to strike guys out, induce ground balls, and limit damage. He's also quite durable, having never appeared on the Major League injured list in his career. Over the past 3 years, Barlow has thrown 191 in the third innings for the Royals, Padres, Guardians, and Reds. He has allowed 4.28 earned runs per 9. He gave free passes to a huge 13% of batters faced, but also punched out opponents at a 26.3% clip and kept the ball on the ground at a 44.1% pace. StatCast has considered his average exit velocity and hard hit rate to be 90th percentile or better in each of those 3 seasons. He earned 16 saves and 42 holds in that time frame. He throws his sweeper more than any other pitch, but also features a four-seamer, slider, curveball, and sinker. The club had a collective 4.71 ERA, getting back to the A's scope, last year, putting them ahead of just the Angels, Nationals, and Rockies. Playing in a hitter-friendly minor league park is certainly playing a role there, but there's clearly room for improvement. The club, up until that point, hadn't been super active in adding to the pitching staff this offseason. Perhaps that's due to pitchers not wanting to play in Sutter Health Park, or maybe it's because the A's have been focusing their resources on internal extensions. Whatever the reason, their only other addition of note so far was to sign Mark Leiter to the bullpen, so the A's have invested less than $5 million in upgrading the pitching staff thus far, but then to be able to add some depth at the back end. With all that being said, I like this move. I really do. And fun fact for you, this is who Nick Kurtz hit that 495-foot home run off of. So I'm sure Scott Barlow is going to be thrilled to be on this side of the fence and being on this side of being able to cheer on Kurtz when he hits more mammoth blast in 2026. But Barlow, you're getting someone that fits the profile. I think someone that has a chance to be successful in Sutter Health Park. Has a high strikeout rate. Yes, he walks too many. You don't like the free passes, which could lead to some of those innings exploding that we saw at certain down streaks during the 2025 A season. But I love that near 50%. It's 44%, so almost half the time he's getting ground balls, which plays well in a very home run haven and a very hitter-friendly park that when anything gets in the air, it seems like in West Sacramento, it's going to go a long way, and it's going to carry longer than expected. So if you can keep the ball on the ground, and with that high velocity, that heavy sinker, I think that plays perfectly well as, at the minimum, a setup guy. But I wouldn't be surprised. Barlow has some closing experience over these last 3 years. So don't be surprised. One, he's absolutely going to be in the mix to win that outright closer job. And if I think he continues to move forward with this type of profile, he does have the makeup to be a closer. I think setup closer is the type of role he'll settle into. But don't be surprised if he's not necessarily the outright closer by the time spring training departs. He will be summoned into save situations at times because there is, and we're going to have a discussion about this closer to the season once we get a better idea of how these positional battles are going on throughout February and March. And once we see the roster come into focus, we'll give our thoughts on if the A's move forward with a continuing as a closer by committee. I feel like Barlow is going to get bulk of those situations. He'll probably get the righty lane, and would imagine Hogan Harris would get the lefty lane. Then that is just without doing too much of a deep dive. Like I said, that's going to be a March episode, but wouldn't be surprised if it looks something like that. But I like this move again. Very cost-friendly for the team. They bring him in on a 1-year deal. That seems like how a lot of these reliever deals get done unless you're at the top end of the market. And I think Barlow has a very strong chance to be successful here in the green and gold and really add some depth and finally lengthen this A's bullpen to a more respectable place. Good luck to Barlow. Welcome to the A's. And again, if you want to come on A's Day, you are welcome as well. We would gladly welcome you on for an in-person or a Zoom interview for our lovely audience to be able to get to know you. All right, next topic of discussion. So now we are going to, this was a corresponding move after the earlier transaction where the A's brought in they claimed Andy Ibanez for off waivers. They had to DFA Max Schuemann to be able to clear space on the 40-man roster. So, as a follow-up to that, they actually were able to complete a trade with the New York Yankees. So the A's have traded infielder Max Schuemann in exchange for minor league right-hander Luis Burgos. Schuemann was bumped off the roster after the A's claimed Ibanez. The 28-year-old infielder delivered subpar offensive numbers over parts of the past 2 seasons with the club. Schuemann has a career 78 WRC plus across 672 big league plate appearances. He did contribute on the base paths with 21 steals and 23 attempts. Schuemann was a consistent base stealer in the minors, including a 52 stolen base season across 3 levels in 2021. Schumann's main intrigue during his time with the A's was his defensive versatility. While the majority of his starts came at shortstop, Schuemann saw time at second, third, and all 3 outfield spots. He ranked in the 95th percentile in outs above average last season. The swap will give the Yankees a glove-first option to serve as infield depth. Second baseman Jazz Chisholm has dealt with his fair share of injuries. Shortstop Anthony Volpe is currently recovering from off-season shoulder surgery and isn't expected to be ready for opening day. So for the Yankees, this does provide some emergency depth. The Athletics net, in return, a 20-year-old right-hander with minimal professional experience. The Yankees signed Burgos as an international free agent in 2024. The entirety of his brief pro career has been spent at the Dominican Summer League. Burgos has a 3.39 ERA across 79 and 2/3 innings with the DSL Bombers. The solid run prevention results have come with subpar strikeout numbers, 8K per 9, and control concerns to go along with that as well. Burgos has walked 4.7 batters per 9 innings. The 20-year-old is likely headed to the lowest levels of the A's minor league system for more extended seasoning. So, I don't think too much to talk about here, except really just want to give our flowers to Max Schuemann. Obviously, in terms of offensive production, like we've talked about a little bit earlier, wasn't what you wanted, but he provided tons of defensive versatility and another element to the A's offense that is not necessarily very prevalent, which is being aggressive on the base paths and swiping bags. And that's something last year that seemed to be focused mainly on Schuemann and Butler. So now losing Schuemann, that is going to be an element that is going to be tough to replace. That's not necessarily the A's strength. That's not their overall offensive philosophy, but it's good to have different areas, different ways that you can beat an opponent. But Max Schuemann really gave the A's fans a wonderful moment. He ran, if you're not familiar, the last game at the Coliseum, he ran around the field carrying a giant A's flag as a tribute to the A's, and he ended up, after that, scoring the final run ever for the A's at the Coliseum in a victory against the Texas Rangers. So it's crazy how that all comes full circle. And just want to wish him the best of luck with the Yankees. And want to give him a shout out. Last year in July, we had the opportunity to interview Max Schuemann at Sutter Health Park before a game. It was right behind the left field wall, towards the entrance of their clubhouse. We appreciate his time. If you haven't listened to that, go back and still post it on our YouTube channel, as well as available as an audio episode on Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcast. It's still there for your listening pleasure. But can't thank him enough. He was very nice to talk to. We talked to him for a few minutes, and I think he's going to have an opportunity to maybe perhaps flourish with a new fresh start in a fresh place. And the Yankees certainly will use his defensive versatility, and they'll certainly use his legs later in games, especially where they have a few DHs like Giancarlo Stanton that typically get spelled later in games for faster options on the base path. So perhaps there is a role to at least a bench spot on the Yankees roster, but at the least, I'm sure they'll storm at AAA for depth as needed, but don't be surprised, especially with their injuries earlier in the year, if you do see Schuemann in pinstripes at the big league level for the 2026 season. And as compared to what the A's are getting, I think, it was good for them to get something as compared to nothing. If they DFA'd him and someone claimed Schuemann, they would have lost him for nothing. They get a long-term prospect. I think Burgos is someone that does have potential to be a long-term play, but definitely it's someone that we're not going to have our eyes on for the immediate future. He does still need to seem to work on his command, but his run prevention was at an elite level in the DSL league last year. So don't be surprised if he's down there again, or perhaps at the lowest A level. But something to put a footnote in, and perhaps we'll revisit this in a 2 to 3 years' time. He definitely is going to be a development piece, but welcome to the organization, Luis Burgos, and good luck on your new adventure in the green and gold. All right, for our last talking point today, and this is the newest development in A's universe that came across our desk, hence why we had a later recording today than usual, as we had an exciting move in free agency that the A's, seems like to me this is going to be their last move of the offseason unless something significant comes across their desk. But they are in agreement with right-hander Aaron Civale on a 1-year deal. He's guaranteed $6 million and can earn another $1.5 million via bonus incentives. Civale has been a solid 4th or 5th starter for the bulk of his big league tenure. The 30-year-old right-hander sports a 4.24 ERA with a 21.8% strikeout rate, 6.6% walk rate, and 39.4% ground ball rate in 680 2/3 innings dating back to the 2020 season. He had a knack for working deeper into games early in his career, but has typically been a 5-and-fly guy in recent seasons, as he's posted progressively worse splits when turning a lineup over for a third time in the game. Civale split the 2025 campaign between the Brewers, White Sox, and Cubs. He logged a total of 102 innings, 18 starts, 5 relief appearances, and turned in a 4.85 ERA that stands as the second worst mark of his career. Civale's strikeout and walk rates weren't drastically different than in prior seasons, but he was more susceptible to home runs and experienced some atypical struggles with men on base. His 67.8% strand rate was the second worst mark of his career, sitting nearly 6% points shy of his lifetime mark. From 2023 to 24, Civale notched a solid 3.9 ERA in 54 starts between the Guardians, Brewers, and Rays. He fanned a roughly average 22.2% of his opponents against a 7.1% walk rate that was comfortably better than league average. Civale doesn't throw particularly hard, sitting 91 to 92 miles an hour with his four-seamer, 92 to 93 miles an hour with a sinker, and 89 to 90 with a cutter. He also features a curveball around 77 miles an hour and mixes in the occasional slider or splitter. It's something of a kitchen sink arsenal full of average-ish offerings that at his best play up a bit thanks to his plus command. Civale should round out the starting rotation and ensure that the A's don't need to place too much pressure on flamethrowing Luis Medina, who is returning from 2024 Tommy John surgery, or top prospects Gage Jump and Jamie Arnold, either of whom could debut at some point in 2026, with Jump being the likelier of the two. Depth options on the 40-man roster beyond the current group include Gunnar Hoglund, Jack Perkins, JT Ginn, Joey Estes, and yet-to-debut prospects Henry Baez and Braden Nett. Some of those depth pieces who've already struggled at the MLB level could shift to relief roles. I love this move. Absolutely love it. And I think he fits the mold of exactly the type of pitchers that the A's love to bring in. Now, at the forefront, he looks like, to me, he's going to be probably your 5th starter. He's got tons of major league starting experience, and he seems more comfortable in that role. The only issue where he seems to come into later in his career is finding a definitive plan of getting hitters out consistently that third time through an order. So, part of me thinks, well, with some of that relief experience, perhaps he could be a bridge guy that can pitch, 2-3 innings at a time, be very effective 2 times through an order. That's what the A's love. Mitch Spence is a prime example of that. JT Ginn, they've used in multiple roles like that. Joey Estes. They love having guys that can serve multiple purposes depending on the need of the team. That is how you create depth on a major league pitching staff. And so cost effective. And I know he's coming off one of his worst seasons, but you can't tell me that I feel like playing for 3 different teams didn't have an effect on that, having different roles in multiple spots, and no excuses. And again, it was still, it wasn't anything great. It was sub 5, but not anywhere close to his peak where he was right around 3.7 to 3.9 range during his time in Cleveland. I think it was 3.97 actually, which if the A's would get that from their 5th spot in the rotation, they will sign up for that in a heartbeat and might be some of the best $6 million they've ever spent. That is very cost-effective, nevertheless. He is someone, I'm excited about it, but there is tiny, nervous hesitation about one aspect of this. His command is very good. So I think that helps his pitches appear even more effective. He has a pretty, I think, above average spin rate as well. Here's one thing that if it doesn't work, it's the nature of the environment. What did I mention a few moments ago? His home run rate increased in 2025. He wasn't pitching in Sutter Health Park regularly either. So let's see. Maybe he reinvents himself a bit, dives back into more of that ground ball pitcher, trying to work edge to edge as compared to being overly concerned with pumping strikes. Effective balls can keep hitters off, because perhaps if you're going to be in consistent locations, hitters can just sit there and tee off. So I think Civale fell into that trap a little bit last year, and perhaps I think a pretty good developmental aspect of the A's. I know talent-wise and the results haven't been there consistently. I think they do a pretty good job and could perhaps tweak Civale to be an effective fifth starter. But worst case scenario, if it doesn't work out in the rotation, like I mentioned, you have plenty of guys that are chomping at the bit that do have starting experience. You have Hoglund, you have JT Ginn, you have Jack Perkins, you have Estes, you have even a Braden Nett. Perhaps one of the prospects like Jump or Arnold even get into the mix. So you have a lot of solutions there that have not always been there as of recent years. And that's why the excitement around this organization continues to build. You bring in a guy like this that is the name of the game, it seems like in the modern game, is provide as much versatility on your club as you can, so you can have interchangeable roles, and you can have different pathways to victory to avoid you becoming predictable and running out of options and getting into a rut of just doing the same thing over and over again that just flat out isn't working. They do that here with Civale. Great job. Like I said, he's probably going to end up starting the year as the fourth, fifth guy in the rotation. But like I said, if those struggles return, where you're seeing an inflated ERA and home run rate that third time around, which was very clearly on display this past season, you can slide him into that long relief, middle relief role where you can bridge the gap from a starter that goes 4 or 5 innings and hand the ball from Civale to your back end guys. I think this is a home run move, and I think it's one that perhaps kind of, looking back, could have seen coming, but didn't know how advanced in talks were there, and perhaps thought Civale was going to head to one of the Chicago teams once again, or perhaps back to Milwaukee, who they seem to be looking for more cost-effective solutions as well. But I think this could really work out. If he can really just tinker on that home run problem, I think this could really pay off a lot better than we even think for a $6 million fifth starter type. So looking forward. Best of luck to Aaron Civale. Would love to have you on the show, on our show, talk about your experience in Cleveland and your stops since, what goes into your makeup of having consistent command, and what you're going to bring to the A's in 2026. Would love for our audience to get to know you. Best of luck in the green and gold. We're rooting for you and looking forward to you rounding out a rotation that perhaps could be a strength of this team in 2026. And with that brings us to the conclusion of another edition of A's Day. On today's show, we talked about Andy Ibanez being claimed from the Los Angeles Dodgers. Mark McGwire is back in the green and gold. He joins the A's baseball operations department as a special assistant. Scott Barlow is signed as depth to the back end of this bullpen and will be in the running to be the A's closer during the spring training competition for that role. The A's and Yankees land a trade as the A's send Max Schuemann to New York in exchange for minor league right-hander Luis Burgos. And then we wrapped up today by talking about the most recent signing as the A's add depth to their starting rotation and perhaps their bullpen, depending on how the 2026 season goes, as they are in agreement on a one-year deal worth $6 million with performance bonus incentives worth up to $7.5 million in total, bringing in Aaron Civale to the green and gold in 2026. We'll be back behind the mic once again for real this time for Friday's show. We'll discuss any more transactions that do go on between today and Friday, as we will be by then in the full swing of the return of pitchers and catchers and position players to camp in Mesa. We'll be sure to provide any updates. Be sure to follow along on our social media channels. We love to see all that spring training content. We'll retweet it from the A's social media sites and wherever else we view it. We want to share it with you too to build up that excitement of the return of baseball in March. We're very excited that baseball is rapidly approaching. We also will discuss on Friday's show who on the A's is going to be competing in this year's upcoming exciting World Baseball Classic. And if you're not familiar with the World Baseball Classic, we'll do a brief overview, a little bit of a preview for you to get you all caught up to speed there. And for this week's edition, we're going to kick it back to the 80s and a special edition because he is back in the green and gold, like we mentioned, to the baseball operations department. We're going to do a deeper dive in telling the story of slugger Mark McGwire. So definitely a fun, exciting show on Friday to kick off your Valentine's Day weekend. That's all I have for you today. Once again, I'm your host, Joe Grado. Thank you all for tuning in. We appreciate you, your continued support of the A's and us here at A's Day. We're growing to new heights, and we're excited to cover this ascending team, and hopefully a playoff berth is on the horizon for the 2026 A's. Take care, everyone. Have a great week, and we'll see you back here, same channel, same place, for our Friday show. Holy Toledo, let's go A's.